I couldn't keep my nose out of trouble, so I was expected to be sent back to Canton, Michigan again. But due to a misunderstanding, I was sent over to Canton, China instead. I had time to reflect on how I got here during my arduous layover in Taiwan. I was finally sent off to Guangzhou, where I was picked up by a balding man in a car. I was expeditiously driven out of Guangzhou and through the mountains until I arrived to the city called Taishan. Taishan is considered a small city in China, with the majority of the land being rural. The city has a similar population and land area as Hidalgo County in Texas. But when I arrived to the main sub-district in Taishan, it felt very urban and developed. The way the city is built out is different than what's typical in the United States, so I wanted to go observe how the city is laid out and developed.
If they threw away the maps to this whole wide world, you wouldn't get away. My heart would find you, boy. You wouldn't get far. It would be just a waste of time. I got a built-in radar.
The city has a historical center in Taichung, its main sub-district. Inside this historical center, the buildings are built tightly knitted. The streets are lined with various low and mid-rise buildings. The buildings are built up to the street and with the sidewalk being shaded with the structures above. The buildings are mixed use with a variety of commercial and retail spaces on the first floor and residences on the floors above. They are built at a smaller scale with many buildings and facades lining the street on the block. And because of the smaller scale, there are a variety of different storefronts on the ground. The streets are also on the narrower side, with non-uniform blocks in the street network. Vehicle traffic is fairly slow in this part of the city, so bikes and pedestrians occasionally share the street with cars. Bollards will appear along the sidewalk to protect pedestrian spaces from cars. There is also a pedestrianized street blocked off by bollards. This pedestrianized street is lined with businesses and vendors. It's a popular street for people to hang out at night, but you'll see people here at all times of the day. Heading out from the old city center, we are met with residential blocks. They are mostly made up of taller, mid-rise residential apartment buildings. They will build these apartments in clusters of identical buildings and are organized in a grid within a block. Alleyways make up the space in between these buildings. The buildings themselves are often built wide but narrow, giving them a long rectangular foundation on the ground. Within the block, the ground level of these buildings are usually garages or apartments. Some of the alleyways will actually be lined with vendors and small storefronts from converted garages. The alleyways will mingle pedestrians, bike, and motor traffic, but the road space is narrow, so all the traffic generally moves slow because of this. These apartment blocks are segmented by higher speed arterial roads. The buildings facing the arterials will feature more commercial and mixed uses on the ground level. These businesses tend to be larger, and parking lot plazas in front of the buildings will be common along busier corridors. Some of the arterial roads will feature a separated bike lane, while others will not. Moving farther away to the outskirts of the urbanized area, the type of building developments begin to diverge in opposite directions. In one direction, the apartment buildings are built even bigger, with many high-rise clusters making up the majority of the outward sprawl. These blocks of high-rises are surrounded by larger and higher speed roads. Many of these roads feature giant separated bike lanes with shared motorcycle and scooter traffic. The ground level podiums of these high-rises facing the road are used for commercial activity, but they are larger in scale and resembles a strip mall. They will also have parking lots surrounding the front of the commercial spaces as well, but these parking lots will be bigger than what the mid-rise buildings have. Around these new developments, new shopping malls are also being built to close proximity to these high-rise apartments. Instead of alleyways, the space in between these high-rises within a block tend to either be pedestrianized spaces or parking. Walking, bikes, and motor scooters are often used in these pedestrianized spaces. Green space and parks are also featured throughout as well. This space is often gated in these new high-rise developments, making it accessible to only residents. The walkability of the buildings suffer from the higher prevalence of gated communities that make it harder for people to walk through a block, and the presence of faster and larger arterial roads make it harder for pedestrians to cross to different blocks. The other type of new development that is common is low-density residential housing, like single-family homes. These homes tend to be in gated communities and don't feature mixed use. They do have some American attributes like having a built-in garage. The single-family homes here do differ from the United States because the yards here are relatively minimal. And some of these homes are technically duplexes because they share a wall. These homes are considered luxuries and they make up a small amount of the total housing stock. Further out from the city core, the land becomes rural real quick. And out there in the farmlands, a lot of people live in towns and villages. The buildings in the villages are built closer together with mostly low-rise residential buildings. Smaller villages will have mostly standalone homes, while larger villages and towns will introduce more housing types, like mid-rise buildings. Streets are narrow in these villages, and within smaller villages, the alleys are like outdoor hallways. Out in the farmlands, the street space is shared with all forms of transportation, as motor vehicle traffic is minimal with slow speeds throughout. In stark contrast to the United States, low-density urban sprawl is not common in this part of China. Developments are dense and urban, or they are clusters of tight-knit towns and villages in rural and agricultural areas. The majority of the new sprawling developments in Taishan have dense high-rises. However, the roads leading out to these towers copy the wide and forgiving road layouts from the US. Generally, accommodations for cyclists are considered with wide bike lanes, and appropriate sidewalks with physical separations from car lanes. But they do occasionally go with painted bike gutters as well, just like the US, which predictably get used for parking. While these new areas are dense and urban, they have become more accommodating to cars and walkability has taken a backseat. The shift in design in the new urbanizing areas has seemed to parallel with the increase of cars in the city, with more car parking cropping up everywhere. Public transit does exist in the form of buses, but personal vehicles are still the predominant mode of travel. Cars are growing in popularity and are becoming common family vehicles, but personal vehicles that people use in China are more varied than in the States. Motorcycles, bikes, and scooters are often used to get around, with many dedicated parking spots for them. Even in rural villages, many people get around by motorbike or by bike. Electric scooters are growing in popularity here, and there are even dedicated charging stations for them. Utility vehicles like trucks also come in many forms and sizes. You have a variety of K-style trucks and cargo vans doing work around the city. It's common to see pickup-styled motorbikes being used too. Pickup trucks do show up with some child-crushing sized trucks in the mix, but they are less common than other types of trucks. Compared to the United States, where pickups top the charts of what consumers purchase. There is a fair amount of traffic noise in Taishan, but the super loud cars with antisocial amounts of exhaust noise are rare. While in the United States, you can expect to hear something like this every day. It is interesting to see the developments in the city of Taishan and how they compare to what I'm used to seeing in the States. The size of the buildings, roads, parking, and sidewalks grew larger in parallel when heading out from the city core. The urban sprawl stayed dense as the scale of developments rose heading out from the older city center, but this change in land use led to corridors that are better at accommodating vehicle traffic at the expense of the walkability experience. Replicating some of the historical development patterns can improve walkability for new developments, like smaller scaled city blocks and adding pedestrianized streets and alleys. So with some adjustments, the city of Taishan can avoid repeating some of America's urban planning mistakes.
Inside